In the heart of the sunlit village of Nindalama, where red dust clings to sandals and mango trees mark the paths between homes, there's a name whispered with admiration: Clarice. Her salon sits at the edge of the market road, a modest structure made of brick and blue-painted wood, always alive with chatter, laughter, and the rhythmic tapping of combs against glass jars. The smell is unmistakable: peppermint, clove, and something else, something rich and ancient. No one questions it. That scent, to them, means beauty. It means transformation. Clarice, a woman in her 50s with flawless dark skin and thin silver strands delicately braided into her hair, is more than a hairdresser. She's a healer of confidence. A guardian of feminine pride. Her hands move like they've known each scalp since birth. She never rushes. Her eyes are kind. Her words gentle. Her presence magnetic. They say her oil can fix anything: edges lost to bad wigs, bald spots from heartbreak, even the confidence stolen by gossiping aunties. But today, something was off. Zena, a bright university student, had come for a routine touch-up. Clarice massaged her scalp, humming low and slow, dipping her fingers into a thick jar of amber oil. She rubbed it into Zena's roots like a priest anointing a queen. Then Zena stiffened. Her body shook once, then went limp in the chair. Clarice didn't panic. She held her gently, whispered into her ear. But Zena whispered something first. A single phrase. "They are waking, and they are hungry." The salon fell silent. The mirrors darkened for a moment, as if the sun behind the clouds had blinked. And Clarice, she only smiled. A slow, knowing smile. The salon door shut with a soft click behind Clarice as she ushered everyone out. The midday buzz of the Nindalama market faded as she drew the blue curtains shut. Zena lay across the long reclined chair, her eyes fluttering behind closed lids. Her lips murmured broken fragments: "They vines, roots in the walls, she knows," but she wasn't awake. Clarice's silver-threaded braid swayed as she leaned close, her fingers resting gently on Zena's temple. Her voice dropped to a tone no one else in the city had ever heard, low, ancient, and filled with authority. "Rest now, daughter of Endoli. You're early. But you're ready." She dipped a cloth in warm water steeped with hibiscus petals, wiping the oil from Zena's forehead. Then, without another word, she opened a small drawer under the sink, pulling out a string of black beads. She wrapped them tightly around Zena's left wrist and whispered, "Let the oil remember her." Zena awoke an hour later, confused. Her head throbbed like a storm behind her eyes. Clarice offered her sweet ginger tea and spoke with warmth, as if nothing unusual had happened. "You fainted, my dear. Heat stroke maybe. You university girls don't eat enough," Clarice chuckled, braiding a final strand at the back of Zena's head. Zena blinked at her reflection. Her hair had never looked so full, so rich. It shimmered in the sunlight slipping through the curtains. But she didn't feel right. "Did I say anything?" she asked quietly. Clarice sipped her tea. "Only that you missed breakfast." Zena laughed nervously, unsure why the room felt heavier. She left the salon feeling off balance, the blue bead snug around her wrist, slightly warm. That night, the dreams began. Zena stood in a field of waist-high hair, black, coiled, kinky, stretching beyond the horizon. It pulsed, like breath. In the distance, a massive woman loomed, taller than a tree, her hair winding into the clouds. Her face was a blur, but her voice was clear. "Blood has remembered. The roots are calling." Zena gasped and woke up covered in sweat. Her hair clung to her neck like vines. The beads on her wrist glowed faintly in the dark. The next day at school, everyone stared. "Zena, your hair! Is that a wig?" "No," she said, confused. "Clarice did it." Her classmates circled her like bees. The hair was longer, thicker, shinier. But that wasn't all, she felt them. She knew which girl had cried herself to sleep last night. She felt the lie in another's compliment. A boy who brushed against her desk blinked and blushed uncontrollably. She avoided mirrors, but one caught her off guard in the library. She froze. In the reflection, her eyes were still hers, but there was a shimmer. A gold flicker deep behind the pupils. And something else. A woman. Standing behind her, though no one was there. "Zena," the woman whispered. "The oil has chosen you. But do you know what it costs?" Back at home, her mother, Mama Temi, noticed immediately. "Who told you to go to Clarice?" she asked, her voice tight. "She's always done my hair, Mama." Her mother's eyes narrowed. She didn't reply. That night, Zena heard her praying. Not in English. Not even in Yoruba. But in a dialect Zena had never heard, one that pulled at something in her bones. Zena opened her diary to write, only to find that her fingers began to move on their own. They wrote words she didn't know. "The tree is not dead. It sleeps beneath the stone." She dropped the pen in fright. The next morning, her mother was already burning something on the stove. The whole house reeked of bitter herbs. She grabbed the oil bottle Zena had brought home and threw it into the fire. But the flames didn't rise. Instead, they lowered. The room fell cold. Then, the fire gave a low cry, a sound like a woman wailing from under the earth. Mama Temi dropped the ladle and stepped back. Zena stood at the door, her shadow long and sharp across the floor. "Mama," she whispered. "What's happening to me?" Her mother turned slowly, her voice trembling. "That oil doesn't just grow hair, Zena. It grows what was buried." Zena looked down at the beads on her wrist. They were glowing again. The moon in Nindalama hung low and thick, like a swollen fruit waiting to drop. Its pale light dusted the tin roofs of the village in silver, but none dared wander the market road after midnight, except for one woman. Clarice. Her sandals whispered against the cracked stones as she passed the silent stalls and sleeping mango trees. She carried a woven basket in one hand, a clay pot in the other. No one ever saw her walk this late. No one ever dared to ask where she went. But tonight, someone was watching. From behind the rusted frame of an old kiosk, an elderly beggar named Mambo tracked her silhouette through the shadows. He had seen much in his 73 years, wars, storms, even a man swallow nails and live, but Clarice walking barefoot in moonlight with a pot of smoke trailing behind her, that he had never seen. Clarice's path led beyond the market and past the old community well. She stopped at the edge of a plot behind her house, a garden fenced with woven sticks and carved charms. It looked like an ordinary herb patch by day. But at night, it breathed. The air shimmered faintly, as if a thin skin of magic stretched over the plants. Clarice stepped inside and placed the pot at the foot of a towering tree in the center of the garden. Its bark was black as coal, its leaves too wide for any known species. They drooped like thick strands of dreadlocks, almost touching the ground. She knelt and opened the basket, pulling out small bundles, roots wrapped in red cloth, a dead bird, a lock of hair tied with gold string. One by one, she fed them into the fire. The flames hissed, but not with heat. They hissed like something annoyed, awakened. Clarice began to chant. Her voice was not her own, it grew deeper, layered with echoes of women long gone. It rose and fell in rhythm with a flickering fire. Her hands moved in circles, tracing symbols in the air. She spoke in the old tongue, one that hadn't been heard aloud in Nindalama for generations. Ira-ku Tuma. Ira-ku Tuma. Ira-ku Endolu. The wind picked up, though the trees around the garden stood still. The strange black tree rustled, just once. As though it had heard. Or perhaps, answered. Then, Clarice removed a vial from her waist. It held thick, amber-colored oil. She opened it, dipped her finger, and drew 3 long lines across her forehead. "This is the offering." Her voice was firm. "The chosen one has begun to bloom. The seed is inside her now." From the darkness, a breeze rushed into the garden, swirling the flames higher. Within them, faces appeared, women, old and young, their eyes closed, lips moving soundlessly. Clarice didn't blink. She only nodded. "She is strong," she whispered. "Stronger than I was. But the others must not interfere." Suddenly, the faces in the fire screamed, not in fear, but in warning. Clarice turned sharply. Behind her, hidden in shadow, something moved. It was Mambo. The old beggar had crept too close, too curious for his own good. A dry twig snapped under his foot, and in that instant, Clarice raised her hand. A gust of wind knocked Mambo off his feet, slamming him against a tree trunk. He groaned, struggling to stand. But Clarice didn't approach. Instead, she whispered a word, one too ancient for memory. And just like that, he forgot why he was there. At dawn, Mambo woke outside the market stall, trembling and cold. The only thing in his pocket was a single black bead, identical to the ones on Zena's wrist. He couldn't remember the night before, only that something had watched him from inside the fire. Back in her salon, Clarice unlocked the trapdoor beneath the wash station. She descended into the earth, carrying her basket. Below the floor was a small chamber lit with oil lamps. Shelves lined the walls, holding jars filled with murky liquids, dried herbs, hair in labeled bags, and pieces of worn parchment written in the old tongue. She placed the used vial of oil back on a velvet cloth, next to many others just like it. But one jar was different. It pulsed with light, as if alive. Clarice stood over it and smiled. One strand at a time, she whispered, until the crown is complete. From upstairs, the first customer of the day knocked on the salon door. She was early. But Clarice didn't hurry. Down here, time moved by its own rules. And Zena was only the beginning. The salon buzzed the next morning, like always. Women laughed over gossip and whispered over men. Babies clung to their mothers, and the sweet, burning smell of shea butter and herbs danced in the air. Clarice moved like a queen among them, measured, graceful, smiling. Her braids shimmered in the daylight like silver cords woven by ancient hands. But underneath the clatter and comfort, something pulsed. Something not quite human. Zena sat in the corner, her eyes darting as she watched every movement Clarice made. The scent of the oil still lingered on her skin, even after several washes. And the beads, oh, the beads, they would not come off. She had tried. Cut, burned, soaked in soap. Nothing worked. It was as if they were fused to her soul, not her wrist. She had to know more. After school that day, Zena came back to the salon, not for braids, not for tea, but for truth. She waited until Clarice was alone, just finishing with an older woman whose locks had gone grey at the roots. As the woman left, Zena stepped inside, her voice firm. "Auntie Clarice, I need to ask you something." Clarice raised her brow without turning. "Is it about the beads?" Zena froze. Clarice smiled and pointed to the curtain behind the wash station. "Come." Zena hesitated only a moment before following. They passed the familiar hair dryers and comb racks, slipping behind the curtain and into the dim rear of the salon. There was a single wooden chair and a cracked mirror mounted on the wall. But Clarice didn't stop here. She bent to the floor, brushing away a worn rug. Beneath it, a trapdoor. Zena's breath caught. "You're not the first to wear the oil, Zena," Clarice said softly. "But you might be the last." With a creak, the trapdoor opened. A cool breath of earth rushed upward, and a narrow staircase led down into silence. They entered the underground room in silence. The walls were made of clay, with hanging vines that seemed more alive than decoration. Clay jars sat in neat rows, labeled with names and dates. Zena stepped closer. Amora, 1984. Nkechi, 1992. Zuwaira, 2007. All women. All dates. Clarice lit a lantern and handed it to Zena. Each one of them wore the oil. Each one was chosen by the tree. Zena turned sharply. "What tree?" Clarice walked to the far wall and pulled aside a beaded curtain. Behind it stood a mural, painted directly onto the clay, a large tree with thick, coiled branches and dozens of women kneeling before it, their hair flowing into its roots. Zena gasped. "It's not a normal tree," Clarice said. "It feeds on memory. Blood. Hair. It's part of us, our legacy. When our foremothers were hunted for their healing, they buried the heart of their power under this village." Zena's hands trembled. And the oil? What's in it? Clarice's gaze turned serious. Pieces of those who came before. Their hair, their essence. It's not just for beauty, Zena. It's for awakening. Every time I mix it, I say their names. Every drop connects the living to the root. Zena took a step back. You mean I've got dead people's hair in mine? Clarice laughed softly. No. You have living memory. The tree only takes from those who gave willingly. It's not death, it's continuation. But Zena's mind raced. That dream. The voices. The burning oil. Why me? She whispered. Why now? Clarice walked toward her slowly, her silver braid swaying. Because the tree woke up, she said, voice low. And it called your name. At that moment, the lantern flickered. Zena turned toward the wall of jars. One of them began to shake. Gently, then violently. It fell, crashing to the floor. The clay shattered. But there was no oil inside. Only hair, long, black, and still wet. Clarice rushed forward and picked up a strand. Too soon, she muttered. Someone is disturbing the root. Zena's chest tightened. What does that mean? Clarice didn't answer. Her eyes were distant now, glowing faintly in the lantern light. Then she whispered, we're not the only ones who remember. That night, Zena sat on her bed, bead still tight, hair still full, heart still racing. She didn't sleep. Not because of fear, because of hunger. Not for food, but for knowledge. Whatever Clarice had awakened in her, it wanted more. More memory. More truth. More hair. And outside her window, the wind whispered something through the mango trees. A word. A warning. Choose. It began as a whisper on market day. She walked straight through the square, head bald, not even a scarf. Not bald. Shaved. Clean. With a razor. No woman in Nindalama walks like that, not unless she's grieving or cursed. But this woman was neither. She had no name that anyone knew, yet she commanded silence as she passed. Her steps were slow but proud, her skin smooth and glistening with palm oil. A single black tattoo ran from the center of her forehead to the tip of her nose, a mark like a vine with tiny thorns. Children paused their games to stare. Traders fumbled with their scales. Even goats and chickens gave her path wide berth. Clarice, from behind her salon window, sipped hibiscus tea and watched. She knew exactly who the woman was. Later that afternoon, Zena returned to the salon, not for hair this time, but because the pull was too strong. Something inside her itched. Not her scalp, not her skin, something beneath. She found Clarice sitting on a low stool, crushing dried petals with a wooden mortar. Auntie, Zena said quietly, I saw her. Clarice didn't look up. You mean the woman with the crown of nothing? Zena nodded. She's not from here. No, Clarice replied, but she once was. Zena frowned. Then why don't the elders know her? Because the elders forgot. Clarice stood and walked to the back wall. But the tree didn't. She pulled aside a calabash bowl resting on a small altar. Inside it were torn scraps of fabric, old bones wrapped in twine, and a thick braid of black hair. This belonged to her, Clarice said. Before she renounced the oil. Before she severed herself from the root. Zena's eyes widened. She was one of us. Clarice's jaw tightened. She still is. That night, as the last customer left and the evening wind cooled the dust outside, the bald woman appeared at Clarice's door. No greeting. No smile. Clarice met her gaze without flinching. You shouldn't have come back, Mweni. You shouldn't have chosen the girl. She was chosen long before I touched her scalp. Zena, hiding in the back room, strained to listen. She could feel the tension between the two women like lightning waiting to strike. The bald one, Mweni, stepped deeper into the salon, running her fingers along the shelves of oils and creams. I remember this smell, she said softly. Yarrow. Basil. Henna. And something else? She turned suddenly. Hair from the tree. Clarisse nodded. The tree still gives. Mweni sneered. And it still takes. Her fingers brushed the edge of a green bottle and paused. Tell me, she said, does the girl hear voices yet? Zena stiffened. Clarisse said nothing. Mweni laughed. Of course she does. That's how it starts. First dreams, then whispers, then memories that don't belong to her. She's stronger than you, Clarisse said, her voice calm but firm. Mweni's eyes darkened. No one is strong enough. Not for what comes next. Suddenly, she reached into her robe and pulled out a bundle wrapped in cloth. She tossed it onto the floor. Zena gasped. It was hair. Cat. Bloody. Still warm. A warning, Mweni said. I found this outside the northern grove. Someone is harvesting the roots for themselves. Someone who doesn't follow the tradition. Clarisse picked up the bundle and unwrapped it carefully. The hair was thick, kinky, and ash blonde. A rare shade in Nindalama. She frowned. That's not one of ours. No, Mweni said. It's someone else. A foreigner. But the tree still reacts. You feel it, don't you? Clarisse nodded slowly. The shaking jar. The waking spirits, Mweni said. They are restless. The girl will be caught in the middle. Clarisse stared into the broken strands. Then we'll need to protect her. Mweni sighed. That's why I came. Not to fight. To warn. After Mweni left, Clarisse went down to the hidden room. Zena followed quietly, barefoot, holding a lantern. Clarisse placed the new bundle of hair on the altar, beside the others. She used to be like you, Clarisse said. She was the strongest of us. The tree bloomed the night she was anointed. Zena knelt beside her. Then why did she shave her head? Clarisse hesitated. Because the memories got too loud. And she couldn't tell which ones were hers anymore. A silence settled between them, heavy as smoke. Will that happen to me? Zena asked. Clarisse didn't lie. It might. But not if we prepare you. Zena swallowed. How? Clarisse stood and took a thin blade from the shelf. With truth. With pain. With blood. She cut her own palm and let the drops fall onto the altar. Your turn, she whispered. Zena held the blade. She didn't flinch. Outside, the wind howled through the mango trees again. But this time, it didn't whisper. It screamed. The water ran cold that night. Zena stood under the thin trickle from the iron showerhead, her back hunched, her body tense. The outside pipe had burst during the day, and her mother's muttered complaints about the damn village water system still echoed in her ears. But Zena didn't care. The chill made her feel awake. Real. Grounded. Because everything else about her life was beginning to feel like a dream wrapped in incense and hair grease. The blade. The altar. The tree. The beads that wouldn't fall off. The whispers. They'd started earlier that evening when she was washing her face in the mirror and saw someone else's reflection behind her. A blur. A woman. Her hair long and wet, her mouth moving, but no sound came out. Zena had turned. No one was there. Now, the bathroom tiles clung to her bare feet. She turned the shower knob tighter, squeezing out a few more drops before the pipes groaned in protest. That's when she heard it again. A voice. But this time, it was clear. As if someone stood inside the shower wall. She cut me. She took the curl. Without asking. Zena spun around. Her heart thudded. Her lips parted. The voice came again, low, female, old. Now I wait, in the roots, and she forgets. Zena backed out of the stream, shivering. Who are you? She whispered. No answer. The mirror, fogged slightly from the cold air and her breath, shimmered. She wiped it with her palm. And then she saw them. Not just one, 3 women. Their faces were overlaid onto her reflection, faint, ghost-like. One was laughing silently. One was crying. The third was pointing directly at her. Zeena stumbled back, hitting the wall. Then, just as suddenly, the mirror cleared. Her own face returned, pale and frightened. She grabbed a towel and ran. In her room, she lit one of Clarice's oils and dabbed it behind her ears, hoping to drown out the leftover voices with the strong scent of peppermint and clove. It didn't work. Because now the whispers weren't coming from the bathroom. They were coming from inside her head. Not yours. Not yet. She chose wrong. Zeena covered her ears and sat on the floor, legs folded beneath her, heart racing. Her breath came in short, sharp bursts. She stared at the beads around her wrist, still there. Still glowing faintly in the dark. She had to go back. It was nearly midnight when Zeena arrived at Clarice's salon. The streets of Nindalama were silent, the usual sounds of motorbikes and market chatter replaced by the rustle of mango leaves and distant dog barks. The salon was locked. Zeena pounded softly on the door. Nothing. She moved to the side window and peered in. Inside, the combs were all perfectly aligned. The jars stacked neatly. The mirrors covered with thin cloth. But something else caught her eye. A shadow. Moving toward the back room. Zeena's breath hitched. She knew that shadow. It wasn't Clarice's shape. She knocked louder now. Then harder. Still, no answer. She circled to the back of the building. There, beside the clay wall, half covered by weeds, was the old hatch Clarice had once pulled open, the entrance to the room beneath the salon. She hesitated. Then, with shaking hands, she pulled it open. The ladder creaked as she descended. The underground air was thick and sweet, like rotting fruit and incense. The jars were all in place, but one was shattered on the floor. Again. Zeena bent to look. No label. No braid. Just shards and a dark, oily stain on the clay floor. A whisper brushed her ear. "You're not ready." Zeena turned sharply. And there, standing at the far end of the room, was a woman. Dripping wet. Hair matted. Eyes wide with sorrow and rage. Zeena gasped. "You're one of them." The woman didn't speak. She moved forward slowly, her footsteps silent against the earth. Behind her, the tree mural glowed faintly. A low humming sound began, like a heartbeat echoing in the soil. Zeena stepped back. "What do you want from me?" The woman raised a hand and pointed, not at Zeena, but at a small crack in the wall. Zeena squinted. A breeze pushed through. Cold. Wrong. It smelled of rust and something ancient. Something that didn't belong in Nindalama. She leaned closer. And then the wall shifted. A piece slid open, revealing a tunnel. Narrow. Damp. Alive. The woman vanished into it. Zeena stood frozen. The whisper came again. "Not all routes lead home." Her skin broke out in goosebumps. Her mouth was dry. But still, Zeena took one step into the tunnel. Then another. Because if she wanted the truth, if she wanted to understand what was happening to her, she couldn't rely on Clarice anymore. She had to follow the women who had once worn the oil. The forgotten ones. The tunnel felt like it had no beginning and no end. Zeena's bare feet moved one after another along the damp, root-threaded floor. The oil from Clarice's earlier anointing still clung faintly to her skin, but the peppermint scent was weakening. Now, the air around her smelled like something else, earth and blood, and something that reminded her of a grandmother's forgotten room, dusty, sacred, and broken. The walls were tight. She couldn't stretch her arms without touching both sides. Sometimes they pulsed, softly, like breathing clay, and other times they whispered. Yes. Whispered. Ruawa. Juma. Adesala. Names. Hundreds of them, flowing like wind. Some familiar from old village funeral chants, others foreign, almost unpronounceable. Xena stopped when one name caught her breath. Xena? 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 She froze. Who's saying that? She whispered, turning her head. No answer. But the name kept flowing. A river of identity. Xena, the unready. Xena, the rootless. Xena, or the last? A breeze pushed against her back like a shove. She moved forward. About 20 paces later, the tunnel opened into a small circular room, its ceiling covered with thousands of long strands of braided hair. They hung like vines, brushing her face. The floor had strange patterns drawn in black oil, symbols shaped like eyes, mirrors, and closed hands. At the center, a single lantern flickered on its own. No flame. Just light. It hung above a wooden bowl filled with thick green oil. Xena moved closer. She peered into the bowl. It wasn't oil. It was hair. Thousands of tiny coils floating in a dark liquid. Some still attached to pieces of scalp. Others braided into tiny charms. A few were moving. She backed up, horrified. But her foot struck something. She turned. A small figure sat in the corner, wrapped in black cloth. Eyes open. Glowing faintly. You found the memory well, the figure croaked. Xena swallowed. Who are you? The figure chuckled. The sound was dry, cracked, like paper folding into itself. I am what Clarice refuses to become. Xena stepped forward slowly. What do you mean? Clarice mixes the oil. I am the one who remembers what happens after. The figure leaned forward. Her face was partially burned, the skin twisted over the bone like melted wax. But her eyes were full of story. She once gave this oil only to the chosen. But now she gives it too freely. Market women. Schoolgirls. Tired housewives looking for thick edges and soft curls. They don't know what they're inviting. Xena's lips trembled. Inviting what? Memories. Souls. Lives. The figure gestured toward the hanging braids. Each one is a story left unfinished. When the oil is rubbed into the scalp, the spirit inside it seeks a way to finish what it began. Xena's eyes widened. That's why I'm seeing things. Hearing things. The figure nodded. You carry more than your own name now. Xena looked up at the braids, her heart racing. So, if someone uses the oil too much, they forget who they are, the figure interrupted. They wake up one day and speak in another woman's tongue. Laugh at another man's joke. Cry for a child they never birthed. Xena turned to the memory well. Her reflection stared back at her, clear and young. But then it changed. The face in the oil aged before her eyes, lines deepening, eyes dulling. Then another face appeared. Then another. She stepped back in terror. I want it to stop, she whispered. The figure smiled, a twisted, heartbreaking smile. Then you must make a choice. Either burn the oil, or add your name to it. Xena frowned. Add my name. Your hair. Your blood. Your memory. You can either become part of the legacy or destroy the path entirely. Xena's hands trembled. But Clarice said it was a gift. It is, the woman whispered. But every gift comes with a price. The tree doesn't give freely. Xena fell silent. Then she remembered something. The bald woman, Amweni. She shaved her head. She walked away. The figure nodded. Because she chose not to carry anyone else's memories. But you've already begun. The oil's inside you. Xena closed her eyes. Her scalp itched, not from sweat or dirt. From movement. Something was shifting beneath her skin. What do I do now? She asked. The figure stood slowly. She reached into a sack beside her and pulled out a small blade made of obsidian. You must find the root that connects your memory to the rest. Only then will you understand who you are in this story. Xena took the blade. It was heavier than it looked. The figure backed into the shadow. Go. The tunnel will close soon. Zena turned toward the dark path ahead. She could hear the whispers again. But now, some were humming. Softly. Like lullabies. Zena? Zena? She pressed forward. Because she had to know. Was she carrying a gift? Or was she being possessed? Zena emerged from the tunnel gasping. Her eyes blinked hard against the first morning light seeping through the cracks in Clarice's salon wall. It wasn't bright, not yet, but the sun was threatening to rise, casting long shadows across the floorboards of the underground chamber. She clutched the obsidian blade in her right hand and the memories in her chest like a smothered scream. As she stepped into the back room of the salon, the faint scent of clove oil returned, but now it didn't comfort her. It unsettled her. She smelled the souls in it. The laughter. The crying. The secrets. The door creaked open. Clarice stood there. She wasn't smiling. You weren't supposed to go down there, she said quietly, her arms folded across her chest, a deep sadness etched into the lines around her eyes. Zena didn't speak. Clarice stepped closer, reaching for the blade, but Zena stepped back. What is this? Zena asked. Why do I feel like someone else is inside my skin? Clarice sighed. That's the price of legacy, child. Legacy. Zena's voice cracked. This isn't legacy. It's possession. Clarice moved to the wooden stool and sat down, smoothing her long silver braid. What did the memory keeper tell you? She said I had to choose. Burn the oil, or add my name to it. Clarice nodded slowly. And what do you want, Zena? Zena's voice was barely above a whisper. I want to know whose voice I keep hearing when I sleep. I want to know why my scalp bleeds when I brush it now. I want to know why, last night, I laughed like a woman I've never met. Clarice stood up. She walked over to the corner of the room and pulled down a cloth covering one of the mirrors. Etched across the frame were dozens of names burned into the wood. Ruawa. Juma. Wambui. Nia. Io. Lebo. Names from every generation. Every village. Some names even had no vowels, clicks and marks from old tribes who no longer existed. Then Zena saw it. Her own name. Etched at the bottom. Shaking, she stepped closer. But I didn't. You didn't have to, Clarice interrupted. The moment you heard the whispers, the braid accepted you. The oil remembers everyone who listens. Zena gripped her scalp. Her hair pulsed with warmth. A single strand fell forward, and she saw it clearly now. It was braided. On its own. Tiny, tight coils that weren't hers. Clarice, what's happening to me? She cried. Clarice hesitated. Then she reached behind the oil rack and removed a glass jar. The contents shimmered darkly, deeper than black. It didn't reflect light, it drank it. She unscrewed the top and gently dipped her fingers into the mixture. She walked toward Zena. Sit. Zena hesitated. I'm not trying to trap you, Clarice said softly. I just want to show you what lives beneath the braid. With trembling hands, Zena sat on the stool. Clarice rubbed the dark oil into her scalp. The scent was unfamiliar, no peppermint or clove this time. It smelled like iron and fire. Zena's eyes fluttered shut. And then, she saw her. A woman with long black braids and a cloth tied around her mouth. She sat by a river, washing blood from her hands. Around her, women with half-shaved heads wept into their palms. In the distance, a mango tree stood tall, but its fruit was black and heavy. Zena tried to move, but her body wouldn't respond. The scene shifted. Now the woman stood inside a clay hut, painting symbols on the walls with strands of her own hair. Every time she painted, the braid grew longer. Then the woman turned. She looked right at Zena. And whispered, "Finish it. Finish what I began." Zena gasped and opened her eyes. Clarice was standing over her? You saw her, didn't you? She asked. Zena nodded. Her voice shook. Who is she? Clarice lowered her gaze. Her name was Adiz. She was the first. She made the oil. But it wasn't meant for beauty. It was meant for memory. For warning. Warning. Zena stood up, dazed. Warning about what? Clarice paused. There are things buried in this city, secrets no one wants to remember. The oil brings them back. Piece by piece. Zena moved toward the mirror again. Her reflection blinked, but not in sync. It blinked after her. I don't want to lose myself, Zena whispered. You haven't, Clarice said gently. But the braid that bleeds has chosen you now. Zena turned sharply. What do you mean, the braid that bleeds? Clarice walked over to a locked drawer. She opened it and pulled out a box wrapped in goat leather. Inside, coiled like a snake, was a single braid. Thick. Black. Still wet. And bleeding. A slow, steady trickle of dark red dripped from one end into a small bowl beneath it. It belongs to Adiz, Clarice said. No one has been able to return it to the earth. Zena stared at it, horrified. Why not? Because it won't let them. The braid twitched. Just once. And then the room fell silent. Zena backed away. But Clarice placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You must carry it now. Until you understand how to end what she started. Zena's heart thundered in her chest. The braid was waiting. The city was watching. And Zena? She was no longer just another girl from Nindalama. She was the keeper of blood memory now. The sun hung low over Nindalama as the market stirred with its usual morning hum. Hawkers shouted the day's prices, women haggled over plantains, and children ran barefoot, chasing each other with sticks and laughter. Yet beneath this colorful chaos, Zena walked with a secret. A braid that bled. A memory that wasn't hers. A scalp that pulsed like it remembered too much. Clarice had told her to stay home. But Zena couldn't. She needed answers. And there was only one person outside the salon who might have them, a man the entire village whispered about but never faced. Baba Kuza. The man with no scalp. He lived at the edge of the city, past the dried-out cassava fields and the skeletal remains of an old train station. His hut sat crooked on a patch of land where even weeds refused to grow. Children threw rocks at it from a distance but never dared go near. Zena didn't knock when she got there. She didn't need to. The door opened before her knuckles touched it. Baba Kuza stood in the doorway. He was older than anyone should have been. His eyes were yellow with age, and the top of his head was covered with thick brown cloth, wrapped like a turban. But blood had soaked through parts of it. His voice rasped. So, you've been touched by the oil. Zena stepped in without asking. How do you know? He didn't answer. Instead, he motioned to the middle of the room, where a wooden chair sat surrounded by dozens of empty bottles, scalp brushes, old wigs, and mirrors. So many mirrors. None of them faced outward. All were turned in, facing the chair, as though they were watching. Sit, Baba Kuza said. Zena obeyed. He moved to her side, unwinding the cloth from his head. She braced herself. When the last layer fell away, her stomach twisted. He had no scalp. Literally. Just smooth bone, cracked with age. No hair. No skin. Just scars and whispers. Yes, whispers. From his skull, a faint sound rose like steam escaping an iron pot. Zena leaned closer. She heard names. Not just whispered ones, screamed ones. Cries. Songs. Lullabies. It was the same as in the tunnel. You were once a keeper, she whispered, stunned. Baba Kuza nodded. Before Clarice. Before the oil was used for vanity. Back when it was still feared. Zena's heart pounded. What happened to you? He turned slowly, eyes meeting hers. I listened too long. I wore the braid too proudly. I stopped being myself. What do you mean? I became everyone else. Their pain. Their songs. Their final thoughts before death. The scalp could no longer hold it. So it tore away from me. Xena covered her own head, where her scalp itched like ants were crawling beneath it. I feel it, she whispered. Even now. I wake up singing songs I've never heard. I braid my hair in my sleep. I see places I've never been. Barbacusa smiled sadly. Then you are close. Close to what? To choosing. Whether you will carry the braid forever, or burn it and lose every memory it has stored, including your own. Xena stood up. But I don't want to lose who I am. Then you must walk the path. She frowned. What path? He turned toward one of the mirrors, lifted it slightly, and revealed something behind it, a narrow tunnel, smaller than Clarice's, lined with old prayer beads and burnt scalp combs. Xena stepped back. I've been in one tunnel already, she said. Barbacusa shook his head. That one showed you what was. This one shows you what will be. Xena bit her lip. And what's inside? He stared at her. You. Inside the tunnel, it was quiet. Not whispering like before, too quiet. Xena walked slowly, her fingers tracing the prayer beads along the wall. Each one pulsed as she passed, like it recognized her touch. She began to see visions. First, a younger Clarice, sitting cross-legged, grinding black seeds into a thick paste and crying. Then a woman she didn't know, bald, thin, eyes bright, whispering words into a flame and watching a jar of oil throb like a heartbeat. Then Xena herself. Older. Stronger. Her eyes painted black. Her braids longer than she had ever grown them. She stood in front of a salon. Not Clarice's. Her own. A line of women waited outside, holding mirrors. But they didn't want haircuts. They wanted memories. Xena stumbled, the vision fading. Her hands were trembling now. The scalp itched worse. She turned to head back, only to find Barbacusa standing at the entrance again, waiting. You saw it, he asked. Xena nodded, tears in her eyes. But I don't want that. Then burn the braid. I can't. I need to know who the woman is, the one who keeps speaking to me. Barbacusa smiled. Then you must go to the origin tree. Xena tilted her head. The mango tree. He shook his head. No, child. That tree is only a gate. The origin tree is older than this village, older than Nindalama itself. It grows beneath the city, between the river and the graves. Xena's voice dropped. Graves. He turned, rewrapping his scalp with care. Clarice will not help you get there. She fears what you'll become. What will I become? Xena asked, trembling. Barbacusa paused. Then said just 3 words. The braid's voice. Xena did not sleep that night. She lay on her mattress, eyes open, ears ringing with the whispers of the braid. It coiled like a living thing on her scalp, thick with scent, peppermint, clove, and something older. Something deeper. Clarice's oil still sat on her table. The lid unopened. But Xena could smell it from across the room. It called to her. But it wasn't the oil she needed now. It was the tree. The origin tree. Barbacusa's word circled in her head. It grows beneath the city, between the river and the graves. She had never heard of such a place in Nindalama, and she had grown up here. Yet something inside her, perhaps the oil, perhaps the braid, knew where to go. She left before dawn. The city was not awake yet, except for the old woman who swept the steps of the mosque and the boy who sold sugar bread to taxi drivers. Xena wore a long cloak and wrapped her head in a scarf, not for modesty, but to silence the braid. Its whispers had grown louder since the tunnel. She passed the edge of the marketplace, where Clarice's salon still slept in shadow, the wooden sign creaking gently in the breeze. A light flickered inside, but Xena didn't stop. She could not face Clarice. Not yet. Not with the question she carried. The river was hidden behind the old textile factory. Most people forgot it was even there. It had long dried up into a narrow stream, but the stones around it still sang when you stepped on them barefoot. Xena followed the stream down until she reached a fork, a split that wasn't on any map. To the left, the newer graves, polished and still visited. To the right, the old ones. The ones no one spoke of. Graves whose names had eroded from stone. Graves choked by vines and forgetfulness. She turned right. The graveyard didn't scare her. Not in the usual way. What unsettled her were the braids. Each grave, each forgotten stone, had a braid tied to it. Some made of black string, some made of real hair. Some dry. Some fresh. She bent to touch one. The moment her fingers brushed it, her mind lit up with a face. A young girl. A laugh. A fall. A scream. Xena gasped, stumbling back. They were memory graves. And someone had been feeding them. She walked deeper into the graveyard until she reached a circle of 7 mango trees, twisted and thick-rooted. At their center was a hollow, so wide and deep it looked like a sinkhole to another world. The air here buzzed, not with sound, but sensation. Like static against her skin. Then, she saw it. Down in the hollow, growing not from soil, but from skulls, was the origin tree. It didn't look like the other mango trees. Its bark was white, almost bone-colored, and its roots tangled around ancient things, broken combs, glass jars, rusted scissors, braids sealed in clay. And from its branches, instead of mangoes, hung jars of oil, swaying gently in the wind. Xena climbed down slowly. Every step felt heavier. Like time itself resisted her approach. When she reached the tree, the braid on her scalp began to pull forward, tugging her like a leash. At the base of the trunk was a carved seat, no, a throne. Made entirely of combs. And lying at its foot was a body. A woman. Wrapped in white cloth. Her hair braided in 7 thick rows, each ending in a knot dipped in oil. Xena knelt beside her. The woman's skin shimmered like stone, like she had become part of the tree itself. Xena reached toward one of the knots. The moment her fingers touched it, a voice entered her mind, clearer than anything the braid had ever whispered. "Xena, my daughter." Xena froze. "Who are you?" she whispered. But she already knew. The woman on the ground wasn't just a keeper. She wasn't just another memory. She was Xena's mother. Her real mother. Not the woman who raised her. Not the quiet widow who sold sugar and told her stories about spirits in the well. No. This woman had been a keeper. A high one. And this tree, this was hers. The voice continued, as if it had waited years to speak. "If you are hearing me now, the braid has chosen you. I had hoped it would skip you. That you would live free of the burden. But blood remembers, and the braid finds its own." Xena's hands trembled as she listened. "I mixed my last oil here. I sealed myself into the tree to protect what we were guarding. The ingredients, the ancient ones, they are not just plants. They are history. Every bottle carries not just beauty, but memory. Identity. Power." Xena wiped a tear. "Why didn't you tell me?" The voice grew softer. "Because knowledge is dangerous. The oil is meant to heal, but men will use it to control. That is why we hid it in salons, behind laughter, mirrors, and girlhood. A safe place. Until it was not. Clarice tried to protect it. But now she fears it. You must not. You must decide, do you bottle the past, or burn it?" Xena stood and turned to the jars hanging from the tree. Some glowed. Some shimmered. One, closest to her, had a name etched into the glass. Xena. She reached for it, heart pounding. The moment her fingers closed around the jar, everything around her fell silent. Even the braid stopped moving. She opened the jar. And what came out was not oil. It was a voice. Pure. Ancient. Hers. Xena of the 7th comb. Keeper of truth. Heir of the origin tree. Your path begins now. Xena turned and saw a figure standing at the rim of the hollow above her. Clarice. Not smiling. Not kind. Holding a razor in one hand and a bottle in the other. Clarice stood at the edge of the hollow, the early morning sun casting a long shadow over her face. Her eyes, usually warm and inviting, were sharp and unyielding, like a woman who had carried a secret far too heavy for decades. The razor in her hand caught a stray glint of sunlight, while the small bottle beside it shimmered darkly, almost like liquid night. Xena froze, the jar in her hand suddenly feeling heavier than ever. Clarice, Xena's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried across the hollow, breaking the stillness. Clarice didn't move at first. Then, slowly, she descended the stone steps leading into the tree's hollow, her footsteps steady and sure, like a queen returning to her throne. I hoped you wouldn't find this place, Clarice said without anger, just a tired acceptance. Some truths are better left buried. Xena swallowed hard, clutching the jar tighter. Why did you come? What is that bottle? Clarice held it up. The liquid inside was thick and dark, swirling with a subtle golden light. This, she said, is the last oil I ever made with the origin tree sap mixed in. It's a ritual blend, stronger than anything else in the city. It holds power that can protect or destroy. She glanced at the razor in her other hand. And this, she said quietly, is to sever the old ties. To stop the braid's whispers. To free you, if you want to be free. Xena's heart pounded. Free? I don't want to be free of the braid. It's part of me now. But I want to know, what is this ritual? Why the razor? Why the oil? Clarice stepped closer. Listen carefully. When you are chosen by the braid, it means you carry the legacy of the keepers. Their magic, their memory, their responsibility. But the braid can be a chain or a key. The ritual is to decide which. She knelt beside the tree and poured a few drops of the dark oil into her palm. The scent was heady, peppermint and clove, yes, but beneath it, something deeper, almost like earth and time itself. This oil can break the braid's hold, Clarice explained. If you use the razor and the oil together, you cut the braid's power from your bloodline. You sever yourself from the past. But you lose the magic, the confidence, the strength, the protection it offers. Xena looked down at the braid wrapped around her head. It seemed alive, pulsing softly. And if I don't, she asked. Then you carry the burden fully, Clarice said. The braid will guide you. Teach you. But it will demand sacrifices. You will be watched by those who want to steal its power and by those who want to destroy it. Xena's mind raced. She had always thought the braid was just hair, just tradition. Now she knew it was a living symbol of something ancient and powerful. Something dangerous. Clarice stood and looked directly into Xena's eyes. Your mother chose to stay with the tree to protect this secret. I have protected it in my own way, for years. But the city changes. The threats grow. You must decide tonight, will you perform the ritual and free yourself, or will you embrace the braid and everything it means? Xena's breath caught. 1,000 questions pressed on her mind. But one feeling stood clear, she was no longer just a girl from Nindalama. She was part of a story that had been waiting centuries to be told. And now, it was her turn to write the next chapter. Clarice handed her the razor and the bottle of oil. Choose wisely, she said. The sun will set soon. And when the last light fades, the braid will bind or break. Xena took a deep breath. The air around the origin tree buzzed louder, as if the city itself was holding its breath. She looked at the braid, then at the bottle and the razor in her hands. And made her choice. The sun was dipping low behind the crumbling skyline of Nindalama, painting the sky with bruised purples and fiery oranges. The city's noises softened, the chatter from markets and the clatter of cars slowing into quiet anticipation of nightfall. Yet deep in the hollow where the origin tree stood, time seemed to stretch and thicken. Xena held the razor and the bottle of dark oil with trembling hands. She had walked in circles for hours, her mind a storm of questions and fears. Clarice sat silently on the comb throne, her gaze steady but unreadable. I still don't understand why it has to be now, Zeena finally said, her voice hoarse. Why me? Why the braid? Why the tree? Clarice's eyes softened. Because you are the last. The city's last keeper. The braid chose you because the old ways are dying. If the legacy fades, so does the soul of Nindalama itself. Zeena shuddered. The weight of it all was almost unbearable. She took a deep breath and knelt beside the origin tree. Its pale bark glowed faintly in the last light. She unscrewed the bottle's lid, the rich scent flooded her senses, peppermint, clove, and something wild, ancient, like the heartbeat of the city itself. Clarice reached out and gently untied the braid from Zeena's head. The strands fell heavy across her shoulders, dark and thick. Are you ready? Clarice asked softly. Zeena nodded. With a steady hand, she dipped the razor into the oil, watching how the liquid shimmered in the fading light. It was as if the oil was alive, flowing like liquid fire. Then, with a sudden sharpness, she sliced through the first braid. Pain blossomed in her scalp, not just physical, but something deeper, a tremor in her very soul. She gasped but kept going, cutting braid after braid, each snip echoing like a drumbeat in the hollow. The air thickened. The tree's glow pulsed faster. The jars hanging from the branches rattled gently, releasing a warm mist. When the last braid fell free, Zeena held the strands close to her chest. Suddenly, the ground beneath the tree shook. From the earth rose a figure, vaporous, glowing with an otherworldly light. It was the spirit of a keeper before her, her mother, wrapped in swirling mist and roots. Daughter, the spirit whispered, voice both sorrowful and proud, you have chosen the path of freedom. But freedom is not without cost. Zeena felt tears spill down her cheeks. Will I lose the magic? She asked. The spirit smiled faintly. You lose the bond that tied you to the past. But you gain something else, the power to choose your own destiny. The city will always need a keeper, but now it needs a new kind. Clarice stepped forward, pressing the dark bottle into Zeena's palm. Finish the ritual, she said. Zeena closed her eyes and poured the oil onto her scalp where the braid had been. The warmth spread quickly, burning away fear, filling her instead with a steady calm. She felt the tree sigh. The jars above stopped rattling. The hollow fell silent once more. When Zeena opened her eyes, Clarice was smiling for the first time that day. You are free, she said. But remember, freedom is a choice you must defend. Zeena looked around the hollow. The origin tree no longer pulsed with the old magic, but instead stood serene, waiting. She knew her journey was only beginning. As they climbed out of the hollow, the city's lights twinkled alive, busy, bustling, unaware of the ancient battle just fought beneath their feet. And somewhere, in the distant market, a new scent began to spread, a scent of peppermint, clove, and something richer still. The scent of change. The morning sun filtered through the narrow alleys of Nindalama's market, turning the dust into sparkling gold. Merchants shouted their wares, children darted between stalls, and the smell of fresh spices mixed with frying street food. But beneath the usual noise and color, a new rhythm hummed, a low, almost imperceptible whisper that seemed to thread its way through the crowds, curling around heads and hearts like an unseen wind. Zeena walked slowly, her senses alert. The braid was gone, but something had changed inside her. She could feel it in the way the air brushed against her scalp, how strangers glanced briefly at her and then looked away, eyes wide but careful. There was a secret now, a silent language she was only beginning to understand. She paused at Clarice's old salon, now closed for the morning. The blue paint was chipped, the windows dusty, but the faint scent of peppermint and clove still lingered like a secret promise. From the corner of her eye, a small boy approached, clutching a tangled mass of hair in his fist. Miss Zeena, he called out, breathless. Look what I found near the wells. Zeena smiled and took the hair. It was coarse and dark, tied with a faded red ribbon, unmistakably a braid. She glanced around, but the boy had already run off, disappearing into the throng. Her heart tightened. Someone's left a message, she whispered to herself. Before she could ponder further, a sudden hush fell over the market. Stalls stopped shouting, conversations paused, and the air grew heavy. Zeena's skin prickled. Out of the crowd emerged a woman cloaked in deep indigo, her face shadowed beneath a wide hat. She moved with purpose, her steps measured but swift, weaving through the sea of people until she stopped just before Xena. "I've been waiting for you," the woman said, her voice low and smooth, carrying a weight that silenced even the distant birds. Xena tensed. "Who are you?" The woman smiled thinly. "I'm called Esh. I am a friend, and sometimes, a warning." Xena's eyes narrowed. "A warning about what?" Esh's gaze swept the market like she was searching for unseen enemies. "About the braid you cut. About the oil you poured. You've stirred things best left sleeping." Xena swallowed. "I thought I was freeing myself." Esh shook her head slowly. "You freed yourself from the old magic, yes. But the city's power runs deeper than the origin tree or the braid. There are others, people who covered what you have now lost." She reached into her cloak and pulled out a small, black vial. "This contains the essence of the night bloom. It's rare and dangerous. Some say it can awaken the shadows inside a person." Xena stared, heart pounding. "Why show me this?" "Because," Esh said, "you will need it. The market is not just a place of trade and chatter. It's a battlefield where secrets are currency and every whisper can be a weapon. The scent of your new oil has spread, powerful, transformative, but also tempting." A sudden breeze lifted a scarf from a nearby stall, and with it, a dozen pairs of eyes flicked toward Xena and Esh. "People will come asking questions," Esh warned. "Some with good intentions, some with knives behind their smiles. You must be ready." Xena looked down at the vial, the black liquid swirling inside like a storm. "Will you teach me?" she asked. Esh nodded. "I will teach you to listen, to the city, to the people, and most importantly, to yourself. The braid was your birthright, but your future depends on what you choose now." The market noises slowly returned, the spell broken but the tension lingering. Xena pocketed the vial and squared her shoulders. "I'm ready," she said. Esh smiled, then slipped back into the crowd, disappearing like a shadow at dusk. Xena took a deep breath, the scent of peppermint, clove, and something darker filling her senses. The city was alive. And its story was far from over. Nindalama's market was a living beast, pulsing, shifting, and watching. Xena felt it now more keenly than ever. Every face in the crowd seemed to hold a secret, every glance a question, every whisper a hidden meaning. She had walked these streets her whole life, but today, they felt foreign, dangerous. She clutched the small vial of night bloom essence in her pocket. The black liquid was a weight, both in her hand and in her mind. Esh's warning echoed in her thoughts, people will come asking questions. Some with good intentions, some with knives behind their smiles. Xena moved cautiously through the maze of stalls, her senses sharpened. The scent she carried, peppermint, clove, and that rich, ancient note, stirred something in the air. Some noticed it, some pretended not to. But no one ignored it. A sudden brush of fabric caught her attention. She turned to see a man in a dark suit, his eyes sharp beneath a wide-brimmed hat. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Xena," he said smoothly. "I hear your oil works miracles." She narrowed her eyes. "Who wants to know?" "Just a humble admirer," he replied, stepping closer. "I represent a few influential people interested in your recipe." Xena's heart quickened. She had expected questions, but not this boldness. "I don't share my secrets," she said firmly. He shrugged, unfazed. "No one asks for your secrets anymore. They want the power that comes with it." Before she could respond, a woman's voice interrupted behind them. "Power can be a curse," the voice said softly. Xena turned to see Esh stepping out from the crowd, eyes scanning the man. He smiled thinly and backed away. Esh faced Xena. "You're not alone," she said. "But you must be careful who you trust." Xena nodded. The city's web was tightening. As the day faded, Xena slipped into Clarice's old salon. She locked the door behind her, breathing deeply as the familiar scents enveloped her. The jars lined the shelves seemed to glow in the dim light. She poured a small amount of the night bloom essence into a fresh bottle of hair oil and mixed it carefully, watching the liquid darken with each swirl. "This is no ordinary oil," she whispered to herself. "This is my shield." Suddenly, a soft knock came at the door. Xena froze. "Who is it?" she called. No answer. The knocking continued, slow, deliberate. Her hand moved to the jar of peppermint clove oil on the shelf, ready to defend. When she opened the door, no one was there, only a folded note pinned to the doorframe. She unfolded it carefully. "Not all enemies wear shadows. Trust no one. The braid still watches." Xena's breath caught. The braid, the legacy she had tried to free herself from, was not gone. It was watching, waiting. Her reflection in the cracked mirror caught her eye. The hair oil shimmered in her scalp, a symbol of change, but also a beacon. The city held its secrets tightly, but Xena was beginning to unravel them, one whisper at a time. Night had draped its velvet cloak over Nindalama, and the city's hum had softened into whispers and distant footsteps. Inside Clarice's old salon, now Xena's sanctuary, the faint flicker of candlelight danced on jars lined with oils, herbs, and secrets. The air was thick with the scent of peppermint, clove, and something darker, the secret she had yet to fully understand. The folded note pinned to the doorframe burned in her memory. "Not all enemies wear shadows. Trust no one. The braid still watches." It was a warning, or perhaps a challenge. But from whom? She poured herself a cup of spiced tea and sat by the cracked mirror, tracing the swirling patterns in the oil that coated her scalp. The braid she had cut away wasn't just hair, it was a tether, a binding spell that connected her to an ancient power. But now, having severed it, she had opened a door that others wanted to control. Xena's thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the back door. Her heart skipped a beat, but the knock was gentle, almost hesitant. "Who is it?" she called quietly. A familiar voice answered, barely above a whisper. "It's me, Keto." Keto was one of the old friends from the neighborhood, a quiet man with knowing eyes and hands skilled in more than just crafting. Xena unlocked the door and let him in, his presence immediately calming. "You shouldn't be out this late," she said. Keto smiled faintly. "Neither should you. But I heard what's happening. The city's currents are shifting." Xena nodded. "I'm afraid I stirred a hornet's nest." He looked around the salon, the flickering candlelight reflecting in his eyes. Clarice always said there were secret keepers in Nindalama. People who guard the old knowledge, the magic that runs beneath the city. Xena leaned forward, intrigued. "Secret keepers? Who are they?" Keto's voice dropped to a near whisper. "They are the watchers in the shadows, healers, midwives, traders, those who protect the city's soul. They know about the braid, the oils, and the power in the roots of the origin tree. And they don't take kindly to outsiders meddling with the balance." A cold chill ran down Xena's spine. "So, if I want to keep what I have, I need their approval." Keto nodded slowly. "More than approval. You need their trust. And that means you'll have to face the past, the very history you tried to cut away." The candle flickered wildly as a sudden gust swept through the room, carrying with it a faint scent of jasmine and something bitter. "Your oil," Keto said, pointing to the bottle on the table. "It's unlike anything I've ever seen. Clarice's blend was powerful, yes, but yours, it's something else. The night bloom essence changes everything." Xena hesitated. "Esh gave it to me. She said it would protect me. But power comes at a price," Keto warned. "The night bloom awakens shadows not just in others, but inside yourself." Xena swallowed hard. She had felt it, a stirring beneath her skin, a new strength, but also a strange unease. Keto reached into his cloak and pulled out a small, worn book bound in leather. "This belonged to one of the secret keepers," he explained. "It holds their knowledge, their warnings, their rituals. If you want to learn, you must read it." Xena took the book, its weight both comforting and heavy. As she opened the fragile pages, the candlelight revealed sketches of braids, herbs, and ancient symbols interwoven with warnings written in a language both familiar and strange. "Why help me?" Xena asked softly. Because the city is bigger than all of us, Keto said. And because sometimes the strongest magic is the trust we build between us. As the night deepened, Xena and Keto pored over the pages, unraveling secrets that would shape her path, a path that led deeper into Nindalama's hidden heart, where beauty, power, and danger danced in an endless embrace. Outside, the city waited, alive with stories yet untold. The city of Nindalama lay quiet beneath the heavy cloak of night, its red dust settling in the narrow alleys and on the cracked windowpanes of modest homes. But inside the old salon, the air was charged with whispered secrets and urgent purpose. Xena held the ancient leather-bound book tight against her chest, the weight of its knowledge both daunting and empowering. Beside her, Keto's eyes glinted with something fierce, determination, maybe, or caution. "We can't just keep hiding," Keto said softly. "The secret keepers have waited too long for change. They've been watching, but now they want action." Xena nodded, though unease gnawed at her. "And the pact?" Keto's face grew serious. "The Pact of Shadows is older than Nindalama itself. It binds the secret keepers and those who seek the power of the braid and the oil. To join, you must prove you understand the cost of the power you wield." Xena thought back to the first time she had felt the night bloom essence ripple beneath her scalp, awakening strength but also a shadow of fear. She had wanted to protect her people, her city, but what if she was inviting ruin instead? "There's a gathering tonight," Keto continued. "The keepers meet beneath the origin tree, where the braid's power was born. If you go, you risk exposure, but you gain their trust." Xena's heart pounded. The origin tree was sacred, rumored to hold ancient magic entwined with the city's roots. Few dared approach it after dusk. "I will go," she said, voice steady. Keto gave a small nod, pulling a heavy cloak over his shoulders. "Good. But you must be ready for anything. The keepers test more than your courage." The two slipped silently out the back of the salon, stepping into the cool night. The city seemed to hold its breath as they made their way through shadowed streets toward the outskirts, where the giant limbs of the origin tree stretched wide, its bark glowing faintly in the moonlight. A circle of figures awaited them beneath the branches, cloaked and hooded, faces hidden but eyes sharp. The air was thick with incense, and the scent of herbs filled the clearing. A tall woman stepped forward, her voice low and commanding. "Xena, daughter of the braid, you seek our trust. You bear the night bloom essence, a power that can heal or destroy. Why should we accept you?" Xena swallowed her fear and stepped into the circle. "Because I want to protect this city. Because I want to learn from you, not just take your secrets." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Words are easy. The pact demands proof." From within her cloak, the woman produced a small woven basket filled with strands of hair, roots, and powders. "Mix these with your oil," she instructed. "Show us the transformation you can bring." Xena took the basket, feeling the coarse strands and earth-scented powders between her fingers. She carefully combined the ingredients with the night bloom essence and Clarice's peppermint clove base, the mixture darkening to a deep, shimmering black. She applied the oil to her scalp, the scent rich and intoxicating. A warm wave spread through her senses, the power of the braid awakening in her veins. The circle watched silently, then the woman nodded. "You have taken the first step." Suddenly, the air shifted, tension rising like a storm. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward, a man with a cold smile and eyes sharp as knives. "You carry dangerous gifts, Xena," he said. "But power without control is chaos. The city cannot afford chaos." Xena met his gaze, feeling the weight of his warning. "Then teach me control." A murmur ran through the circle. The pact was not only about power, it was about trust, sacrifice, and the future of Nindalama itself. The tall woman extended her hand. "Then you must swear the Pact of Shadows. To guard the city's secrets, to protect its people, and to never let the braid's power fall into darkness." Xena hesitated, then placed her hand in hers, feeling the ancient magic pulse between their palms. As the ritual concluded, the keepers lowered their hoods, revealing faces both young and old, fierce and kind. They were not enemies but guardians, and now, she was one of them. Outside the circle, the city breathed with new energy. But far away, in a darkened room, eyes watched the unfolding pact through a cracked door. The braid's power was stirring, and the game was just beginning. The morning sun crept slowly over Nindalama, casting long, golden shadows across the cracked sidewalks and red dust streets. The city was waking as usual, hawkers setting up their stalls, children darting between mango trees, and the distant hum of traffic blending with the chatter of neighbors. But beneath the calm surface, tension twisted like a vine. Zina sat at the edge of her modest balcony, the ancient book still resting open on the small table beside her. The pact of shadows weighed heavily on her mind. She had sworn to protect the city's secrets, to guard the power of the braid and the oil. But already she could sense cracks forming, cracks that threatened to shatter everything. Her hands traced the braid on her wrist, a reminder of the connection to Clarisse, to the past, and to a future she wasn't sure she could face alone. The faintest sound stirred her from her thoughts, a soft tap on the door. "Zina, it's me," whispered a voice she recognized instantly. Before she could answer, the door creaked open and Esh slipped inside, her eyes flickering with urgency. "We don't have much time," Esh said, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "There are whispers, dangerous ones." Zina frowned. "Whispers? About what?" Esh's voice dropped even lower. "About betrayal. Someone in the circle is leaking secrets, someone who wants to use the oil's power to control the city, not protect it." Zina's heart quickened. The shadow she had feared was no longer distant, it was very close. "We must find out who," Esh continued. "But we have to be careful. If they suspect you, everything you've worked for could be destroyed." Zina nodded, determination hardening her features. "Who can we trust?" Esh's eyes met hers steadily. "Only a few. Quito, myself, and a handful of others who have stood by Clarisse. We must watch every move, listen to every word." The two women began planning in whispers, their voices barely audible over the bustling city below. Meanwhile, at the market road, Clarisse's old salon had become a place of quiet power under Zina's careful watch. Word had spread about the transformation in the hair oils, about the magic woven into each bottle, and the way women left the salon with new light in their eyes and strength in their step. But not everyone welcomed the change. Across town, in a dimly lit room cluttered with old scrolls and broken mirrors, a figure paced. His name was Juma, once a keeper, now a renegade who believed the power should be his alone. "Zina thinks she can unite the keepers and hold the braid's power," Juma sneered. "Fools! Power is for those willing to seize it, no matter the cost." He ran a hand through his thinning hair, eyes burning with greed and bitterness. "I will find her weakness," he whispered to the shadows. "And when I do, Nindalama will bow to me." Back in the salon, Zina rubbed the oil gently into her scalp, the familiar warmth comforting her even as the weight of betrayal settled over her. She thought of Clarisse, her mentor, her friend, who had faced similar dangers in her time. "Clarity comes with courage," Zina murmured to herself. As she closed the ancient book and prepared for the day ahead, a sudden knock startled her. She opened the door to find Quito standing there, his face grave. "We have news," he said simply. "The circle met last night. Someone spoke of a traitor." Zina's breath caught. "Do they know it's me?" Quito shook his head. "Not yet. But suspicion grows. You must be careful." Together, they stepped outside, where the city moved around them, unaware that in the quiet corners and darkened rooms, the battle for Nindalama's soul had already begun. The market road of Nindalama was alive with its usual symphony, the calls of vendors hawking ripe mangoes, the clatter of wooden carts, the shouts of children darting through the crowd. But beneath the vibrant colors and lively chatter, a shadow moved, unseen, silent, watching. Zina and Quito walked side by side, weaving through the stalls with practiced ease. They were on a mission to find any sign of the traitor in the keepers, to protect the secret of the oil and the braid, and to keep the city safe. The aroma of spices mixed with the unmistakable scent of Clarisse's peppermint clove oil as women passed, their hair shining and braided with care. Yet, today, Zina's eyes scanned faces with suspicion, every glance could hide betrayal. "Keep your senses sharp," Quito whispered as they stopped near a stall selling vibrant beads. The traitor could be anyone, even someone close. Zina nodded, heart pounding. She approached a vendor selling woven baskets, his gaze flickering to a figure slipping away down an alley. "That one," she murmured. Quito followed her gaze. "Juma." The rogue keeper's face was hidden beneath a worn cap, but his lean frame and quick steps were unmistakable. He vanished behind a corner, swallowed by the maze of streets. Without hesitation, Zena and Quito broke into a run, chasing the shadow through the twisting alleys of Nindalama's market. The chase was a blur of dust and voices, Juma weaving through stalls, knocking over crates of tomatoes, and ducking beneath low-hanging cloth canopies. Zena's breath burned, but she refused to lose him. Suddenly, Juma stopped in a small courtyard, turning to face them with a cruel smile. "You think you can stop me?" he sneered. "The power in that oil, it belongs to me now." Zena stepped forward, her hands trembling but her voice steady. "The oil's power is not for selfish greed. It belongs to the city, to the people who trust us." Juma laughed harshly. "Trust? Ah! They are blind fools. I will show them the truth, and when I do, you and your precious pact will be nothing." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small vial filled with a dark liquid. "This is my own blend. Stronger, deeper, it will control those who use the braid, turn them into my puppets." Zena's eyes widened. The very thing they had feared, the oil corrupted by dark magic. Quito moved swiftly, grabbing the vial just as Juma lunged forward. A struggle ensued, fists and feet clashing amid the stones. Finally, with a desperate push, Quito knocked the vial from Juma's hand. It shattered, the liquid soaking into the dirt, steaming faintly as it touched the ground. Breathing hard, Zena faced Juma. "You have lost." But Juma only smiled, stepping back into the shadows. "This isn't over. You have no idea what's coming." As he disappeared into the labyrinth of the city, Zena and Quito exchanged worried glances. The threat was real, deeper and darker than they had imagined. Returning to the salon, Zena poured fresh oil into small glass jars, the scent of peppermint and clove comforting once again. But as she worked, a new thought settled in her mind. The power of the braid was fragile, balanced on trust and secrecy. And betrayal could strike from anywhere, even from those closest to her. The sun had dipped low behind the city of Nindalama, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, but the market road was still bustling. The air was thick with the scent of spices, roasted meat, and that familiar peppermint clove oil that drifted from Clarice's salon like an invisible thread weaving through the streets. Yet tonight, the air was heavy with unease. Zena sat behind the counter of the salon, her eyes narrowing as she listened to the faint murmur of voices outside. The oil jars on the shelves caught the last light of day, their golden liquid shimmering softly, almost alive. She remembered Juma's warning, the threat wasn't just his. Someone within the circle might be betraying them. Someone who knew the secret recipe of the oil. Her hands shook slightly as she reached for the ancient book Clarice had left her. The fragile pages whispered stories of power and danger, of love and betrayal. There was a hidden passage she had overlooked before, a caution about the shadow among kin. Before she could read further, the door creaked open. "Zena," whispered a voice, soft but urgent. It was Esh. "I thought you'd be at the circle meeting," Zena said, standing quickly. Esh's eyes darted nervously. "I left early. Something's wrong. I overheard a plan. Someone is trying to poison the next batch of the oil." Zena's heart slammed against her ribs. "Poison? In the oil that every woman trusted to protect their beauty, their pride? Do you know who?" Zena asked, voice barely a whisper. Esh shook her head. "Not yet. But I have a feeling it's someone close. Someone who has access to the salon." The room seemed to close in around Zena. She thought of the women she trusted, Quito, Esh, even herself. Could anyone betray them? Could betrayal come from inside these walls? "We have to act," Zena said, steeling herself. If the oil is poisoned, the consequences could destroy everything Clarice built. They moved quickly, locking the salon's doors and inspecting every jar, every bottle. Zena's fingers trembled as she carefully smelled each one, peppermint, clove, and that rich, ancient scent that meant hope. Nothing seemed wrong. But the threat lingered like a shadow. Someone has to stay awake tonight, Esh said, eyes fierce. I will. No, Zena replied. I must protect the secret. They agreed on a watch system, one at a time, guarding the salon, the recipe, the legacy. As Esh left, Zena's thoughts drifted to Juma and his dark vial. What else was he capable of? And who else might be working with him? Suddenly, a faint knock at the back door startled her. Zena froze. Who would come here so late? She peered through the small window and saw a figure hunched in the shadows. Who's there as she called? No answer. Heart pounding, she opened the door cautiously. The figure stepped forward, revealing a woman cloaked in a faded shawl, eyes wide with fear. Please, the woman whispered. I need your help. I know what they're planning. Zena's pulse quickened. Was this an ally or another danger? Tell me everything, she said, pulling the woman inside. The night deepened as the salon filled with whispered secrets, the fate of Nindalama hanging in the balance. The faint flicker of a single lantern cast dancing shadows on the cracked walls of Clarice's salon as Zena closed the door behind the cloaked woman. The air, thick with peppermint and clove, felt heavier than before, burdened by unspoken fears and secrets. The woman's eyes, wide and desperate, searched Zena's face. My name is Malaika, she whispered, her voice trembling. I was one of Juma's contacts, but I want out. I couldn't let this happen. Zena narrowed her eyes. Why come here? Why risk everything? Malaika swallowed hard. Because I know who the betrayer is. Zena felt the weight of the moment press down on her. This was the truth they'd been hunting, the hidden hand poisoning the heart of their city. Malaika took a deep breath. It's not Juma alone. There's someone within the circle, someone trusted, respected. They've been feeding him information, helping him tamper with the oil. Zena's mind raced. Who? Malaika hesitated, then whispered a name that sent a cold shiver through Zena's spine, Esh. The room spun for a moment. Esh, the brave, loyal woman who had warned them hours ago. Could it be true? Zena's voice was steady but sharp. Are you certain? Malaika nodded. I saw her meeting with Juma in the marketplace. She slipped him a vial, one different from the others. At that moment, the door creaked. Esh stepped inside, unaware of the accusation hanging heavy in the air. Zena, Esh greeted softly, I came to check. Zena cut her off, her eyes locked on Esh's. We need the truth. Were you working with Juma? Esh's face paled. Her hands clenched at her sides. It's complicated. Explain, Zena demanded. Esh's voice cracked. I did meet Juma. But not to betray. I was trying to find out what he planned so I could stop him. Malaika's lips trembled. That's not what I saw. A silence fell, heavy and suffocating. Zena looked between them, searching for answers in their eyes. Suddenly, Esh broke down, tears spilling. I didn't want to betray you. Juma threatened my family. I was trying to protect them. Zena's heart ached, torn between anger and understanding. But the oil, she asked. Was it poisoned? Esh nodded. Only once. I stopped it before it reached the jars. Zena took a deep breath, her mind spinning with betrayal, fear, and hope. The web was more tangled than she'd imagined. We need to act, she said finally. Before the next batch is made. The three women formed a fragile alliance, bound by fear and necessity. Together, they planned to catch the real mastermind, the one who had pulled the strings from the shadows. As the night deepened, Clarice's salon became a fortress of secrets, trust hanging by a thread, and the city's fate resting in the hands of those brave enough to fight for it. Night had swallowed Nindalama whole, but Clarice's salon glowed like a beacon, the soft amber light spilling onto the dusty road. Inside, the air was thick with tension, whispered plans, and the faint scent of peppermint clove, the oil's signature. But tonight, that familiar smell carried a hint of danger. Zena, Esh, and Malaika sat close, heads bent together over the ancient recipe book and a hastily drawn map of the market road. Their voices were low, voices barely louder than the distant sounds of the city's nightlife. The next batch is made at midnight, Zena said, her eyes sharp. We don't have much time. Esh nodded, wiping away a tear. If Juma's still involved, he'll be there. But the real question, who else? Malaika glanced nervously toward the door. There's someone I haven't told you about, a woman who always wears a long braid down her back. She's been seen near the salon, watching, listening. Zena's eyes narrowed. A braid? That's oddly specific. It is, Malaika agreed. But I think she's the one feeding Juma information. And tonight, she's coming for the oil. The three women fell silent, each absorbing the gravity of the threat. Zena stood and walked to the mirror, running her fingers through her own thick braid. Then we prepare. If she comes, we catch her. Esh reached into a drawer and pulled out a small vial. I managed to take a sample from the last batch that was almost poisoned. We can test it for traces. Malaika's voice was steady but urgent. I've heard she uses the oil for more than just beauty. Some say she adds powders that curse those who use it. Zena swallowed hard. The stakes were higher than she thought. The clock crept closer to midnight as the women barricaded the doors and dimmed the lights. Outside, the city was quiet, but inside the salon, every shadow seemed to breathe with anticipation. Suddenly, a soft rustling from the back entrance froze them all. Zena signaled for silence. Esh moved toward the door, her hand steady but her breath shallow. The door creaked open, and a figure slipped inside. Long braid trailing, the woman's eyes gleamed with cold calculation. You shouldn't have come, Zena said, stepping forward, heart pounding. The woman smiled, a slow, knowing curl of lips. Neither should you. In one swift motion, she lunged toward the table where the oil was kept. Esh grabbed her arm, but the woman was strong, pulling a small knife from her shawl. Let go, she hissed. Or the oil, and your precious secrets, will be lost. Zena, quick as lightning, grabbed a jar of the oil and threw it like a pebble, the glass shattering at the woman's feet. The scent exploded in the air, peppermint, clove, and that ancient richness. The woman recoiled, startled, but quickly regained her stance. Enough! Zena shouted. This ends now. A fierce struggle ensued, the three women fighting to protect the legacy Clarice had left behind. In the chaos, the woman's braid was caught, pulling her to the floor. Zena looked into her eyes, seeing something unexpected, fear. Why? Zena demanded, breathless. The woman laughed bitterly. Because power is not given, it's taken. And I will have it. Before they could react, she whispered words that sent a chill through the room, words in a language older than the city itself. The air thickened, the shadows deepened, and the line between friend and foe blurred. The night was far from over.